Public sector unions have tabled a 10% wage increase proposal for 2022 to be applicable to all public servants. Trade union representatives formally tabled their wage demands and other remuneration benefits at the Public Service Coordinating Bargaining Council, where trade unions and the government negotiate matters related to employment conditions in the public sector. The president of the National Education, Health Allied Workers Union, that's NEHAWU, Mike Shingange, and Assistant General Manager at the Public Servants Association, Reuben Maleka, join us for this discussion. Gentlemen, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Leanne. Good morning to the voice at home.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Yes,
Pleasure. Michael, thank you. And I'll begin with you because, Michael, I know that you're actually coming to us you're in Italy at the moment. The joy of actual technology that we can still get you on the program even from there. So thanks for making the time. Now, Michael, let's start with what makes unions decide on 10%? Where did that come from on this increase when it was only last that they agreed to a 1.5% despite demanding increases that were above inflation?
No, thank you very much. Firstly, the projected inflation of the Reserve Bank, but also that one of the IMF, which is projected between 5 and 8%. And obviously, when you consider that, it means if you give workers an inflation-related adjustment, it's actually just to adjust their cost of living, but not to give them any salary increase. But also, if you consider the CPI or the inflation of food, of transport, of electricity, which all of them are way above the inflation, surely it only makes sense that those who are supposed to receive salaries in order to afford such kind of goods and amenities are supposed to receive the increase that is equally or if not even above that. But also you'll remember that as we speak now, the public servants are still reeling from the inflationary erosion that they suffered in 2020 because of the lack of salary increase, while everything else that they do in order to make a living has also gone up. So that's what informed the workers this time around to collectively come together with a demand of a 10%, which is the inflation plus a real percentage increase.
Yeah. Reuben, let me ask you this. Do you not think that 10% is a little bit unreasonable in the economic state we find ourselves in?
No, definitely. And in fact, we were very moderate with 10%. I think Comrade Mike has explained why we would want 10% and the rationale behind 10%. And one can go back to, the beginning of the year when ESCOM made a demand of 20.5% to NERSA, and they received around 15%. So all that combined tells you that the purchase power of workers has been eroded by all means of electricity, transport. Look at the price of petrol. Look at the price of cooking oil. So all those tells you that the power of purchase of workers is actually eroded. They can not even afford transport to go to work. So we are trying to restore the purchase power of workers to ensure that they are able to service the public service. And obviously, we could have even went to the same demand. We know that it's possible. If ESCOM can demand 20.5%, why not public servants?
And I mean, I suppose we do understand that, we really do. But I mean, let's look at the cost. What would this cost the state coffers a year to put this together if we do go with that increase?
Look, at this point in time, the employers actually not came back to us to say, but what would be the cost of 10% when they crunch the numbers? And obviously, as pointed out by Comrade Mike, that coming from 2020, where we have not received what was due to us, also made us to believe that at this point in time, we need to, draw back and make sure that the workers are put in a position where they should have been already. Although it's still way behind, but we are trying to recoup and make sure that the workers are put in a situation where they're able to afford. So it is up to the employer for now to come back to the wage negotiations. We are coming back on the 19th of May, where they'll have to unpack their pairs and show us where they can afford, where they cannot afford. And it's part of negotiations. But we still believe that at this point in time, the public servants have been hard done, especially with the setback of 2020. So we need to restore the public servants to be able to afford.
Yeah. So, Michael, let me bring you into this. I mean, obviously there were many demands tabled last year, but as I mentioned in the introduction, you ended up with only 1.5% salary increases and R1,000 cash gratuity. But unions are still demanding a lot of things, housing allowances and other expectations. Now, those were part of your demands last year, but were not honoured by the government. What other matters are the unions demanding, and what do you hope will change this time round?
Well, it's always the nature of our negotiations that we bring into the package what we call a condition of service for workers. That's why they fall within the ambit of the negotiation. So indeed, the issue of the housing is still part of the demand. The issue of the medical aid is still part of the demand. And of course, the other conditions, including the issues of the leaves, but also the issues of the filling of the vacant posts, that because as and when we're trying to keep up with a deteriorating state which is supposed to be capable, we are also dealing with the fact that the headcount of the public services is strengthening a growing population. We are therefore demanding also the issue of the filling of the vacant posts. You will know that in the public health, we have got a lot of the public healthcare workers that are roaming the streets, some of whom were contracted workers, some of whom are community healthcare workers. We are demanding that those ones, if at all, are going to bring a capable public health system, including building a developmental state, we need to employ those people into permanently. So those are some of the things that we have put there. But look, as to where we end up being, is always a function of negotiation. Where we end up yesterday last year, doesn't take away the reality of the cost of living for public servants today. It doesn't take away the fact that there's a gap in a year that they don't get the salary. It doesn't take away the fact that they can't afford to transport themselves to work. It doesn't take away that they can't afford an electricity hike as granted by NEXA today. So that's why we start with what we think is more reasonable demand. But we do not want to negotiate here. I think the reason we are here is because we have issued a statement, because you will have seen that it has taken a long time before the negotiations started. Actually, this April that has just come and passed should have been the first month of implementation of a new salary deal. We have not done so. So obviously there's anxiety among the workers. That's why we had to go to public, the fact that we have started negotiations, but the negotiations are indeed going to take place in the bargaining council when the employer comes back on the 19th of May.
Obviously this is coming in the backdrop of the whole saga in the Constitutional Court with regard to government not honouring that deal of having that 3-year 8% increase. Now, this, of course, they were victorious in, so one would imagine it's quite difficult for trade unions at this point coming in to negotiate, because firstly, one would ask, where is government going to get the money from? And also we're seeing that from the decisions taken, the trade union representatives have decided to propose a 1-year agreement instead of 3 years previously entered into. Was this a decision taken after what the Constitutional Court ruling, or what actually made this route decided upon?
Look, we have always never favoured a multi-term agreement as public servants. We were always convinced by the employer and the rationale why we must take a 3-year agreement, one of which was to enable the state to budget on what they call a 3-year or MTF. So we have convinced that they budget for 3 years, and that is why the one of 2018 was budgeted for 2018, 2019, and 2020. But when they reneged on the last day, it then convinced us that we were correct all along, never to trust, never to enter into a multi-year agreement, because we were always prepared to engage on a year-to-year, because the economic climate changes from year to year, and each party reserves the right to come back to the negotiating table when the economic climate changes. Now, what the court done, which we should never have ended up in court in the first place, we have said this thing, that whatever you do, the court will do their job. But the institutional relationship that you have between the employer and the employees remains in the bargaining council, in the workplace. The court is not in the workplace. Therefore, what the court has done have not assisted the relationship and the trust relationship that is there between the employer and employee. So that trust is irrevocably broken down. We'll have to work very hard to rebuild it. That is why rebuilding it will have to start small by engaging in a year-to-year agreement until we can gain confidence that the people who will sit with them across the table are negotiating in good faith and not planning to find a technical loophole legally so in future to walk away from an agreement. So that's why we can only enter into a one-year agreement, because that's the only way we can trust that it's going to be implemented.
Yeah. Reuben, I'm going to ask you this question. So where are you hoping the money will come from? We hear government crying poverty all the time, and, you know, there's people are losing jobs, and, you know, the reality of life is upon us. But with an increase like this, where do you think the money is going to come from?
Look, and first of all, let me start by saying that let's deal first with the issue of, synchronizing salaries in the public service. People are always looking as public servants as there is no money. But look at the entities, look at the parastatals. When they request money, government has money. Look at the salaries of entities CEO compared to the salary of a DG of a department. There's a huge disparity. And that is the cause of a concern to say, but why do you always talk about the wage bill, but we are not prepared to talk about the disparities that create an impression that there is no money? There is money, but the money is being diverted to what is called entities, parastatals, instead of the public servants. And obviously, if one day we can sit back and say, but how do you also as South African, go back and implement the recommendation of Zondo Commission and get the SIU to go and retrieve the money that is being stolen? Because at this point in time, one can even state that on year-and-year basis, you get Auditor General stating that there's about 60 billion lost. Nobody is able to account. Nobody is held to even, pay back that particular money. So you cannot claim poverty when you are losing money in that fashion. You cannot claim poverty if you are having disparities in the public service. We want the public service that is unified, the public service that can say that if you are having a CEO of PRASA, that CEO of PRASA must earn equal to the DG of a department. Then we'll talk about that there is no money in the public service.
When we look at what it costs, I mean, already, we've had Treasury that are saying that they have to freeze it because the money is just too much, that when it comes to the public service bill, it is way too high. I mean, just for 2022, it's going to cost 682.5 billion rand. And this is a lot of money. And now if we want to go and take that and increase it up 10%, the reality is that the country doesn't have this kind of money. Does it not worry you? Let me ask this to you, Michael. I mean, when you look at what that wage bill is, does it not concern you that it is too high?
We have dealt with that thing recently in the summit, Leanne, that in fact, when you say it is too high, you have to say compared to who? Is it compared to the similar countries of a similar population and a similar economy? Is it compared to the similar numbers that you have in the public service? Who are you comparing? We have dealt with that. We have dealt with the fact that, in fact, it is not correct. Even as late as last week, when the government was presenting the economic situation in the PSCBC, they have considered that actually the public service wage bill has gone down from the 37% that they have always been preaching. So it is not correct that it's way too high. And actually, the 600 and something billion you're talking about, again, like Reuben is saying, it is not confined to the frontline public servants that are in the PSCBC today. It includes everybody else who's not counted when the time of negotiations come. The ones that are in the entities, the ones in the SOEs, the ones that are paying exorbitant CEO salaries, including the one of the public representatives or public office bearers who have just given themselves a 3% salary increase recently together with their judges. That's the 600 billion. It's inclusive of that. But every time when we go for negotiations, the poor nurses and doctors and the home affairs and the justice and cleaners and community health care workers are the ones who always have to answer the question of the wage bill and answer the question of the debt, as if everybody else who is taken from the public purse is not himself contributing to the wage bill. So that's a point we're talking about, the synchronizing and aligning the public service. What is the public service? And also what it is the cost of doing the public administration in this country? What is the cost of the goods and services in this country? What is the cost of consultants in this country? Not alone only the salary of actually a poor service delivery worker out there. So that's what we have to deal with in this country. The paying of the wage bill in the public service should always be seen not as a cost, but as an investment. If you are to build a developmental state, if you are to build a capable state, if you are to service the ever-growing population.
And I'm going into news time because, I mean, you know, you're making very, very important points. But, you know, sometimes, and, you know, we look at certain areas within the public sector and they are way too staff heavy. There are just too many people working there. And many would say they're not doing their jobs properly. They're not working to, you know, an outcome-based salary that they should be working towards. Bringing that public service sector and the amount of people that are hired in it down and then increasing salaries, I mean, would this not make a little bit more sense as opposed to paying people for honestly not doing their jobs properly? Reuben, do you want to take that one, or Michael? I don't mind who answers it.
No, I don't think that is correct. And if you do the counting, definitely most of the departments are short-staffed. Let's go to Home Affairs. You'll find that they've got so many resources, but they've got few human bodies that are able to service. Look at the police. Today we're talking about the ratio of the police. The police are outnumbered by criminals. Go to the teaching fraternity. Look at the number of teachers. Go to the health institution. It has been reported right now to say that we need about 10,000 new nurses in the hospitals. If you look at all those combined, that tells you that it is not true that there's a high number of public servants who are idling, who are not doing anything. Public servants, as we speak right now, we are short-staffed. We need more capacity to service the public service.
Yeah. All right. We've got to leave it there.
Yeah.
Mike, I'm going to leave the last word with you, but I just want to find out, how long is this open for? What's the next step? I mean, these negotiations are obviously now underway.
No, I wanted to say, unfortunately, you don't have time because we would have wanted to be more specific from the side about where you think there's more public service, because it's a general statement.
Indeed.
But look, we said that we are coming back on the 19th of May. We will hear from the employer, and then it will take as long as it needs to take. Hopefully, it will not take 10 months like we did in 2017, only for the government to renege after we have signed a very hard-fought and negotiated kind of settlement.
All right, we leave it there. Gentlemen, thank you. I've run well into the 8 o'clock news, but I think a very important issue, and one that we're going to be talking about a long time to come. That was the Assistant General Manager at the Public Servants Association, Reuben Maleka, and NEHAWU President Mike Shingange, who is joining us from Italy, if I'm not mistaken, discussing the 2022-2023 salary demands as wage negotiations resume.